In 1656, Diego Velázquez, the exclusive court painter of King Philip IV and holder of 4 simultaneous court offices, created his grand-scale masterwork, today known as Las Meninas. Las Meninas is a culmination of years of Velázquez's architectural and painting experience, exemplifying a mastery of form and content that utilizes linear perspective and Baroque illusionism to create one of the greatest paintings of all time. Now you may be wondering, what makes this simple group portrait one of the greatest paintings ever created? In Las Meninas, Velázquez turns a snapshot of a spontaneous moment into a representative court picture, contravening form and content to ascend above the realm of logical understanding. If you look at this mirror on the back wall, you can see the reflection of a man and a woman, King Philip IV and his queen, Mariana of Austria. This is one of the first known depictions of a monarch and a painter together, and by presenting himself here in the company of royalty, Velázquez makes an argument for painting as a noble and liberal art, while simultaneously making an argument for his own nobility as an artist. Diego Velázquez was born in 1599 in the barrio of Santa Cruz in Seville, Spain. His parents were almost certainly conversos, or Jews who converted to Christianity to escape persecution, and his father was a clerk at the local cathedral. At 10 years old, Velázquez, then a child prodigy, became the apprentice to local painter Francisco Pacheco, a man who would eventually become his father-in-law. Despite the importance of painting in the 17th century, especially to the Counter-Reformation movement, the act of painting was still very much considered a craft or trade, placed on the same level as crafts like stone cutting, masonry, or basket weaving. To fight for painting as a noble art, many theorists look to Pliny's allegory of Alexander the Great and Apelles. Pliny writes of the painter Apelles, who was granted exclusive rights to paint his monarch, Alexander, and how Alexander often visited Apelles in his studio. This led theorists to argue that art patronized by kings was in fact a noble art simply because kings would honor it with their presence. Velázquez no doubt would have heard these arguments from an early age, and he owned a copy of Pliny, along with numerous treatises supporting the cause of painting. Additionally, Velázquez was constantly reminded of his status as a painter by the alcabala, a special taxation on craft goods, which he was subject to even after his ascendance in the royal household. In 1623, when Velázquez was 24, he was granted the exclusive right to paint the likeness of the then 18-year-old King Philip IV. From this moment until his death, Velázquez would be responsible for portraying King Philip IV as a powerful, tactful, and gracious ruler. Through this, Philip IV and Velázquez grew close, and in his 1649 treatise, The Art of Painting, Francisco Pacheco directly related the relationship of Philip IV and Velázquez to that of Alexander and Apelles. 6 years later, in 1629, Philip sent Velázquez to Italy to study the work of Renaissance masters like Da Vinci, a trip that left a lasting impression on the young artist. Upon returning from Italy, Velázquez related to his now father-in-law, Francisco Pacheco, a story of a French painter who, after being unhappy with the status of his original knighthood, was offered more prestigious honors from the king. This story acts as an early example of Velázquez's interest in nobility. Velázquez began to act on these ambitions in 1649, when Philip IV ordered him to return to Italy, this time traveling to Rome to acquire more paintings for the royal collection. While in Rome, Velázquez visited the Vatican to paint this famous portrait of Pope Innocent X, who was very open about his admiration of it, hanging it outside of his office. But that's not the only business Velázquez had at the Vatican. If you look closely, in the Pope's left hand is a petition with Velázquez's signature. Due to Velázquez's Jewish blood, he would have required special dispensation to become a member of nobility, and this petition is almost certainly requesting just that. It wasn't until 1658 that Velázquez officially applied to become a Knight of Santiago, an application that was initially rejected on account of his Jewish heritage. Luckily, Velázquez had spent much of his life creating contacts, and after a nomination from King Philip IV, numerous testimonies from friends in the aristocratic class, and 2 papal dispensations, he was admitted into the prestigious Order of the Knights of Santiago in November of 1659, almost 4 years after the creation of Las Meninas. Understanding the social conditions surrounding Velázquez's motives and ambitions, we can now use them as a lens and take another look at the painting. Let's return to that mirror. An artist depicting themselves in the presence of a monarch would have been highly inappropriate, which is why Velázquez used the mirror to create a sense of ambiguity. This ambiguity is mainly achieved through Velázquez's use of linear perspective, a technique that Leonardo da Vinci named as the guarantor of painting as a noble and liberal art due to its mathematical qualities, an argument well known to Velázquez from his trips to Italy. While the image reflected in the mirror has been theorized by some to reflect the canvas, many historians believe it reflects the king and the queen entering the room. This is reinforced by the figure's expressions. They appear to be acknowledging a spontaneous entrance rather than posing for a portrait. These subgroups of figures engaged in activities are being interrupted by something outside of the canvas, and Las Meninas depicts that exact moment. Velázquez begins to lower his palette. The female dwarf has just turned her eyes to the interruption, and a maid of honor begins to curtsy. The Infanta Margarita Maria has only begun to turn her head from the male dwarf as he hassles the dog, while a bodyguard in a conversation with chaperone Marcela de Ulloa looks up at the interruption that Marcela has yet to notice. Another indicator of the spontaneous entrance of the king and queen can be found in the presence of the queen's apacentador, holding the door on the back wall as would be customary if the queen were passing through the room. So, what is being painted on the canvas? Art historians such as Jonathan Brown assert that the image being painted on the canvas is Las Meninas itself. The dimensions of Las Meninas match those of the canvas almost perfectly, and based on the 1686 inventory of the palace, stating the contents and dimensions of the paintings, Velázquez recreated the dimensions of the paintings on the wall with almost pinpoint accuracy, suggesting that the painting on the canvas was given accurate dimensions as well. Velázquez not only depicts King Philip IV visiting him at work as Alexander the Great visited Apelles, but he depicts the king being present for the creation of Las Meninas itself, suggesting that Philip IV witnessed its creation and endorsed the bold claims that it made. Perhaps the most convincing argument for Philip's involvement in Velázquez's claims to both the nobility of art and his own nobility as an artist is the Cross of Santiago, emblazoned on Velázquez's chest. As I mentioned earlier, Las Meninas was painted almost 4 years before Velázquez was accepted into the Order of the Knights of Santiago. Why then was the cross present? Shortly after Diego Velázquez's death on August 6, 1660, King Philip IV ordered that the Cross of Santiago be added to Velázquez's portrait in Las Meninas. Now this may have been a symbol of gratitude for a life spent in service to the king. It could be a farewell to a lifelong friend. Or maybe, just maybe, it could be Philip's way of officially endorsing Velázquez's claims to nobility, a way of completing his masterpiece.